Hello, my name is David Simpich, and welcome to, well, a rather unusual gallery. It's a portrait gallery, but here the artwork is not hung on walls. Rather, it is suspended in space on strings.
In the late 1990s, my family and I were touring a lot with my plays, particularly my large production of The Pilgrim's Progress, and it was a lot of equipment. We had like 8 trunks and a lot of ski bags full of poles. It took about 5 hours to set the show up and another hour and a half to take it down, and then the show was an hour and a half, so it was a big day to perform a show at a church or a theater. And during that time I began thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could think of a simple solution to going to a church or a theater or a school and present a wonderful small-scale production that would be just a portrait of an individual, like maybe Abraham Lincoln. So I thought maybe, go to a school and have a trunk and take Lincoln out of the trunk and do a wonderful little 20-minute sketch about Lincoln's life using the marionette, and it wouldn't be this huge job of setting up a performance. I kind of wanted to use portraits of people who have influenced my life because I felt I would have a more honest moment, with them in a presentation about their life if they were someone who had influenced me or touched my life. And so I worked really hard on a list in my head, who would I include? King David kept coming to mind. The Psalms have meant so much to me. And I thought, well, yeah, King David. And I thought about Francis of Assisi. The more I thought about it, and the more I just worked on the idea inside my head, it seemed that these characters were not standing easily on their own. It really didn't take very long before these characters started standing together in a production. And my whole idea of simplifying things, a simple little trunk show with 1 or 2 lights and a microphone, it started to turn into a full-scale production where these characters would come together. And what they had in common was how they influenced me. This presentation was becoming a gallery tour, and where I portrayed myself and then introduced the audience to these people who have shaped and influenced me. I have to say it was difficult to finally narrow it down to a cast that would work for this performance. And there were a few characters that were really hard to cut, actually quite a few, because I needed to just have a cast that would work for this thing. And it was difficult. The final portraits cast included Abraham Lincoln, my great-grandmother Nana Ritter, King David, Helen Keller, Pinocchio, Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man, cave explorer Jim White, and Francis of Assisi.
When I was a little boy, my best friend lived just next door. My parents had an apartment attached to our house, and this is where my great-grandmother, Nana Ritter, lived. Almost every day, David would bound or fall or sneak or fly over to my little apartment for a visit.
My great-grandmother is the foundation, really, of this presentation, because without her taking the time to nurture me, she had been a teacher when she was a young woman, and she just had that juice to teach and to read. And I guess I had the juice to listen because we sure spent a lot of time just with looking at a book, and I would listen to her read, and the illustrations would come to life. And I really feel like she is what enabled all of these other portraits to come about and enabled me to see things I couldn't see with my actual eyes. I could see lives, in motion in history because of her vision and the time she spent with me. So she's really foundational to this piece of theater.
Without my puppeteer, what kind of life would I have? So few puppets become real boys nowadays. And I've heard that the ones that are freed of their strings are often at a loss for words and feel strangely listless and inattentive in school.
So in finalizing my cast, I felt I needed to include a fantasy character which had had an influence on me. And I chose Pinocchio for several reasons. I grew up with that story and was always interested in it, but he is a marionette, and I am a marionette puppeteer. And he has issues with strings. And I have had many issues with strings through the years as a puppeteer. So I wanted to include him, and as I signed his name on the dotted line to be a member of the cast, I realized this whole idea of strings is also running through these lives that I have set apart to include in this show. Abraham Lincoln, he never says it in so many words, but he, in many of his writings, his letters and in his second inaugural address, which I use in my show, he is talking about connection. He's talking about being connected to a higher being that, in a sense, is controlling things. This show was a chance to kind of celebrate that idea of connection. You know, I have a connection to these characters which I am presenting in portraits, these very important people. I am connected to them. They are connected to me. The strings are a symbol of that. And rather than being a manipulative situation or where you feel that there are strings attached, there is a strange, mysterious sort of freedom in feeling like you're connected to someone else. This show is a gentle, quiet presentation about these themes that I have amazingly were given to me and brought together as one little theater presentation. But I've had many people tell me that they've never forgotten this, because I think when they see these characters, they immediately begin their own list. And they have a list of people, oh yes, of course, this person would be there. And oftentimes it's someone in our family or a close friend. But there are people in history, their lives are there, and unbeknownst to them, they are influencing us big time by their life. And I like the gentle, quiet way that this presentation shares this and inspires people to think about their connections. They're really important.